You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with political commentator Benedict Spence and Guardian columnist Zoe Williams. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the manhunt launched after the accidental release of the Epping asylum seeker who'd been jailed for sexually assaulting a teenage girl is top story in The Sun, mocking the government's one in, one out migrants policy with the headline, "One out by mistake." The Mail carries the Conservatives' scathing assessment, a blunder that beggars belief. That story is also front page lead in tomorrow's Telegraph. The Mirror claims an exclusive with a report that Prince Andrew is in advanced talks with the King about finally giving up his tenancy of Royal Lodge on the Windsor estate. Labour's defeat by Plaid Cymru in the Welsh Assembly by-election in Caerphilly is top story in The Guardian, which calls the result a stark warning for Keir Starmer. The Eye returns to the increasing talk of income tax being raised in the budget, with economists warning the Chancellor that it would hit millions of workers and further harm public trust in Labour for breaking an election promise. In the same vein, The Times says bosses are angry at the prospect of another increase in the minimum wage. While the Financial Times reports that Donald Trump has sparked a fresh round of global trade turmoil by signalling yet more tariffs on China and halting trade talks with Canada. So, welcome tonight to Benedict and Zoe. Let us start with the Daily Mail, our top story on the front page of many of the newspapers, a blunder that beggars belief. Those were the words of Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, as to the release of the Hadish Kibatu from prison when he was supposed to be deported. Zoe.
It doesn't make any sense, this story. I mean, obviously it happened. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. But the police were supposed to release him into a Home Office deportation centre, well, a Home Office centre ready for deportation, and simply released him into the community. But the layers of blunder that would have gone into that, you know, even if it wouldn't just be one person making a mistake, they would have to, everybody involved in the through the gate process would have had to be completely dreaming. And so you can see why people are extremely upset and angry about it, because not only does it make the Epping Hotel riots look much more, you know, salient, it also makes the public services look completely shambolic.
Difficult to comprehend, isn't it, Benedict, how it happened from start to finish?
Doesn't make for a great press preview if we can't say anything, but it is slightly that kind of situation where we're going, well, how on earth are you meant to explain this? And you know, I feel bad for whoever it is, whichever unfortunate individual is going to be left to explain this in detail to the public when it eventually all comes out, because it is not going to cover anybody in glory. Obviously, it's slightly too early to say exactly what happens, although, as Zoe says, it sounds just like human error. Somebody has, you know, maybe got the wrong form, maybe just not thought very through, and other people down the process have just gone, well, OK, this is what I've been told to do. But as was just sort of touched upon, it's the fact that it wasn't just this, you know, any old prisoner who's been released. It was very much specifically this one whose behaviour is the one that set off the protest outside the Bell Hotel in Epping. So there is also going to be, I imagine, this weekend, an awful lot of apprehension from local authorities. Be thinking, well, could this be potentially the start of more trouble? Will people turn up at the hotel? Will there be protests elsewhere? Yeah, that's what all of this is sort of set against. And it just sort of seemed as though things were just sort of calming down slightly. You know, as winter sets in, you move away from the febrile atmosphere of the summer. People were not quite as antagonised as they were. For this sort of blunder to happen, it just brings all that back up again. And of course, we've heard this evening about, you know, the father of the victim in this case being outside Chelmsford Crown Court, Chelmsford Prison, you know, very angry about the situation. And you can imagine it won't just be him, it'll be lots of other people who will be asking for answers from the authorities how this could happen. It's nothing really to do with the Prime Minister. but it reflects very badly on the government because, of course, everything else that's happening at the moment, as we'll get onto in The Sun.
Well,
Yeah, very embarrassing for the government. The Prime Minister has said tonight he's appalled, as has David Lammy, said that he's livid at what has happened. An investigation, obviously, will be launched, and the primary concern now is to apprehend this individual and deport him.
I mean, to be fair to the police, they probably will. I don't doubt their efficiency in finding him. I mean, he was seen boarding a train for London at 12:41. It's quite hard to completely disappear when the whole country is looking for you. But what it really makes a kind of atmospheric nightmare for the government, because a whole plank of their language on asylum seekers is, you know, contrary to the attacks by Reform and the Tories. If the people are criminals, then they are deported. Then, you know, it's not open season for criminals. They'll feel the full force of the you know, Human Rights Acts can't protect you from being deported if you're convicted of a crime. And if we lack the basic competence to actually do that, then a huge amount of that defence does evaporate.
We turn to The Sun, Benedict, and they're mocking the government's entire migration policy. One out by mistake. This is mocking the one in, one out policy that's been launched.
Of course, because this story is coming off the back of the news that one of the 40-odd individuals who have been sent to France under the terms of that deal has been found to have come in, and that's just one individual who we can identify has been able to come in. It's entirely possible that other people might come back in as well. So it's a sort of a perfect storm of farce, really. You know, you sort of sit there thinking, right, here is somebody who is banged to rights, ought to be deported, needs to be deported, is literally on the list of people to be deported. Oh, we've released him. Here is somebody that we have actually deported as part of the, a deal with France. Oh, he's come straight back. And it's just, as Zoe sort of says, it just gives the impression that they're not on top of these things, the minute details that you need to be tight on if you want to convince the public that you're taking these things seriously. And I don't doubt, actually, that people like Shabana Mahmood are taking this very seriously, and they're going to be just as irritated as anybody, you know, having come into office and being, you know, having to deal and make up for the failures of people lower down the line. But the public had, I think, a very thin amount of patience, given what had gone on under the Conservatives before. Labour came in and said, we are the adults, we're going to take this a lot more seriously, and we've had time to prepare. And we've got the same kind of just farcical blunders that were taking place. And it shows, ultimately, that whatever reforms need to be made, perhaps, or whatever new schemes need to be brought in, what we currently have is perhaps a system itself which is not quite able to handle whatever any government says we're going to do to tackle these things. Actually, you know, key human elements of the system drop the ball far too frequently, you know, and this may simply be an isolated human error, but let's be clear, we're talking about this because it's a high-profile individual. Actually, rather a lot of people do get out of prison by mistake. Rather, a lot of people aren't delivered to the right prisons. They aren't delivered to the right courts on time. It's something that happens a lot more frequently than the public knows. It's simply that we've found out about this one because it's such a high-profile individual.
There was a figure quoted, I think it's about 87.
Yeah.
Prisoners
That's people who are released, accidentally. But I mean,
What, really?
Yeah. No. The one also is people who have been arrested. They are in detention and they're delivered to the wrong prisons for sentencing, for court cases, for all sorts of things. They're delivered to the wrong courts. It happens so much more frequently than people might imagine. But it's simply not really in the public eye, so nobody knows about it. So there's not a great deal of pressure to do anything about it.
Nigel Farage saying that this is evidence that Britain is broken. Kemi Badenoch saying Labour have lost control of law and order entirely.
I think what's so disheartening is that for those of us who supported Labour and had high hopes for the government this time last year, it's been really disheartening to see them drop all their other issues and just focus on asylum seekers because Reform and the Conservatives are making the weather. But if you do allow that to be your most salient issue, and yet you still can't do it right, it makes you look worse than shambolic. It makes you look like, you know, what can you do right if you can't even do this thing which you're giving all your resource to, all your energy, all your priorities?
Another story that will cover Labour in glory. The front page of your paper, Zoe, stark warning for Starmer after election rout in Wales, Caerphilly. The first time in its establishment that it's been lost by Labour. They didn't come third,
No.
but they didn't cover themselves in glory.
I mean, Labour got 11%, so it's terrible. I mean, it's atrocious.
Negative swing of 27%.
Yeah, and this was somewhere, as you say, that they used to be able to weigh Labour votes, not count them. I think everybody knows. I mean, since the SNP swept through Scotland, when was that? 2015. Everybody knows now that if you take places for granted as such Labour strongholds, that you don't have to worry about them. It takes a long time for that to turn, but once it does turn, it takes a long time to turn back. So. I don't think it's an enormous surprise to Labour. Actually, it is like this time on Tuesday. Everybody was talking as though this was in the bag for reform. You know, there was a huge amount of sentiment in their favour. A lot of kind of Welsh nationalist sort of kind of coming round to the idea that any kind of nationalism was better than no kind of nationalism. A lot of people who kind of quieter reform supporters were using this by-election as a subtweety way of saying that they were in favour of reform. It was, I completely bought the mood music. I was really thinking, this is going to be a horrible result. It's going to be a kind of determined swing to the right, and we could all see it coming. Actually, what's happened is it's been quite a swing to the left. I mean, Plaid is making quite a much more left-wing offer than I think they would have been comfortable making 5 years ago. They're really hoovering up the young votes. I mean, turnout among the young was up by, it either went from 41 to 51 or it went up by 41. Sorry to be so imprecise. The point is, it's quite hard to get young voter turnout up. And this has been a kind of really significant effort by a coalition of groups, including kind of, anti-racist voices, pro-refugee voices, people who are really uncomfortable with the anti-migrant rhetoric that Reform is touting all over the country. So even though, things look terrible for Starmer, and people are wondering what his position looks like by May, I would really focus for a little while on how a kind of progressive platform with hope and equality at its centre did really well.
I think that's certainly going to be the case in areas like this that are traditionally Labour anyway, is that there is the possibility of people voting tactically, organising more tactically. But that does show, I think, the sheer amount of space that Labour have opened up, obviously, to their left. And the key thing here is, OK, in Wales, there is one particular party that can fill that vacuum, but there are other parties across the country that might do it elsewhere. And therein lies a bit of a problem, which is that you then have a patchwork of people perhaps picking up votes, and that doesn't necessarily help one particular movement. If it's Greens, if it's, I don't know, Lib Dems, or if it's whatever Zara Sultana's party is called, or if it's Plaid, or if it's the SNP, that doesn't necessarily work. Whereas for the Conservatives, who got, what was it, between 2% and 4%?
2%.
Yeah, completely wiped out. There is only one game in town, that's Reform. And, OK, this was one where they'll perhaps go, yeah, we took a bit of a pasting, but this is a traditionally left-wing seat. Across the country, they'll be looking at what happened to the Conservative vote and going, those are numbers we can deal with, because actually that's what they need to overcome. They need to kill the Conservative Party, and then they can deal with left-wing parties that split each other's votes elsewhere on their own merit.
I heard...
We're running out of time.
Oh,
we're running out of
Next time.
There'll be more time.
We'll talk about this all night.
Zoe and Bendit, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, amongst the stories we'll be discussing, yet more hints of a rise in income tax coming in the budget. That's on the front of the eye. Do stay with us.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry.
is an anti-woman agenda.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from the UK?
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down. As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Sky News, get the full story first. Free wherever you get your news. Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey, it'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes. I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, political commentator Benedict Spence and Guardian columnist Zoe Williams. Let's take a look at the Eye front page. And we know that the budget is looming. 26th of November is nearly upon us. And the economists are warning the Chancellor that raising the higher rate of income tax would hit millions of ordinary workers, including teachers, junior doctors and police officers. Benedict.
So this is, as you say, 7 million people who are working in this country pay 40%, the 40p rate on earnings over £50,000, slightly over £50,000. And of course, once upon a time, you'd think, OK, higher rate of tax, that's going to be people who are doing sort of quite well. It's going to be quite well off. Increasingly, certainly with things like inflation and wage stagnation in this country and the changing the tax bands, that's no longer the case, really. Actually, it's a lot more people that you might think of in the sort of the lower middle bracket, professionally speaking. As you've just sort of alluded to, that includes people like junior doctors, teachers, not famously particularly well-off people. The difficulty that Rachel Reeves has, and it is, it's a really nasty situation she finds herself in, is that the government's spending and the cost of borrowing is just, it can't currently be, the circle can't be squared. She needs to find a way of raising cash. She probably also needs to find a way of cutting spending as well, although doing that with so many backbenchers opposed to things like changing the rules around benefits and things like that, that's very difficult to do. But what we're talking about here are things that headline-wise are going to really make a lot of people very unhappy because, of course, these are not people who feel particularly well off, raising their income tax, to raise what is relatively a very small amount of money in terms of trying to plug the black hole. 2 billion, the Eye says, when we're talking about, tens of billions, multiple tens of billions that need to be found from somewhere. All this does is just feed, I think, into the sense of increasing impoverishment for the lower middle classes, and frankly, the disillusionment that a lot of people, I think, sense. They don't feel as though they're getting a good deal in return for what it is that they're already giving. And what we're talking about here also, of course, We've already had the issue around medics, junior doctors, GPs, nurses talking about going on strike, actually going on strike. This is going to hit them as well. How is that going to go down when you've already got unions suggesting that they want further pay rises, if the government's also coming to them and going, well, you can't have those, but you're also going to have a tax increase?
The thing is, I feel, I mean, my hunch is that junior doctors, it's actually, because it's marginal rate of tax, right? And so unless they're earning a lot, and a lot of their income gets hit with this extra 1p, I don't think the tax burden is going to be particularly heavy on those public sector servants, those public servants that you described. But it comes on the back of so much that they're angry about. You know, the fact that student debt has to be repaid at this rate, whereas their pay is the government uses a completely different index to calculate their pay rises. Teachers are really upset because even though they've had a pay settlement, the schools themselves are really creaking. And, you know, I've spoken to senior teachers who say, I would have rather not had the pay rise and not had to make the budget decisions I'm making in my school because it's so painful to have to do. So you're kind of pushing out an open door of misery with this. And you know, a lot of policy wonks always say, well, they shouldn't have promised no tax rises because they were, you know, that wasn't politic, given that they didn't know what was under the bonnet once they were going to pop it. And also, given that nobody thought there was a huge amount of fiscal headroom anyway, even before they realised all their black holes.
And also a warning that that's damaged political trust in Labour if they do break their election promises.
I sort of think that's a bit of an inside baseball position. I don't think it's because Rachel Reeves promised no tax rises that this is going to be so unpopular. I think it's because it looks like just shuffling around tiny amounts of money between one not especially well-off group and another. Nobody's lives improving that much, no programmatic vision for change, no actual optimism, hope, or realistic plan. And, you know, maybe our ideas of realism would be really, really different. But everybody, whether they're on the left or the right, can see when there isn't a plan.
We turn to the Telegraph. Rachel Reeves, again, top story, front page. She might slash the tax-free cash ISAs. 20,000 is the amount at the moment. That'll be cut in half.
Yeah, cut in half. And supposedly that's to get people to be more incentivised to invest instead in stocks and shares. But when the government is at the same time talking about raising things like capital gains tax and actually making it harder to profit from this sort of thing, you're also going to have a lot of people sort of sat there going, well, is that necessarily worth my while either? Because I don't know. This year it might be raised, I don't know, it's currently at about, what is it, 24 or 26% capital gains tax. It could be even more next year. Who knows what it's going to go up to? And I think that it's that sense of you're asking people to invest in something then that is by definition more risky. And on top of that, they're sat there going, and I can't tell how much payoff there's going to be for that risk. And I just think, broadly, as you say, it's just lots of different people from all angles going, I can't be sure, I can't see where the out is. And underpinning all of this is the discussions around growth. There's going to be no change, ultimately, in how much we're able to raise and how much we're able to sort of spend on public services unless growth gets going again in this country. This government hasn't yet, I think, set out a proper roadmap for how it is it achieves that. We're still bumbling around at quite a low level of growth, and that's what we've yet to see, a plan for getting us out of that stagnation.
Benedict and Zoe, we must leave it there. We are completely out of time. See you in the 11.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Baqir, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.